In this video, I'm going to give you my take on how disclosure is going to go down. But first, we must define disclosure as everyone seems to define it a little bit differently. Disclosure is when the evidence for technological craft, not of human origin, that are flying in our atmosphere becomes so substantial that the scientific and academic community, as well as mainstream media, have no choice but to fully accept it. While we're not there yet, I can assure you we will be soon. In fact, I believe this so thoroughly that I'm willing to stake my entire YouTube reputation on it happening. Luckily, the inevitable is a rather safe bet. We've already had 3 gun camera UAP videos released by the Pentagon. Coupled with that, we had David Fravor testify his UAP experience on national television many times. Fravor was the squadron leader of the VF-41 Black Aces. Fravor's UAP experience encompassed him and another pilot and 2 weapon system operators all seeing the same object with their eyeballs for 5 very, very long minutes. During the engagement with the UAP, at one point Fravor came within a half mile of it. Lastly, the former director of ATIP told us the phenomena is real.
For nearly the last decade, I ran a sensitive aerospace threat identification program focusing on unidentified aerial technologies. It was in this position I learned that the phenomena is indeed real.
And frankly, he would know. ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was a program in the Pentagon tasked with learning how UAP work and whether or not they are a threat to national security.
And the program is closed down, and it said, oh, not a threat.
Contrary to the ignorance of Neil deGrasse Tyson, ATIP is still an active program in the Pentagon. And there are actually many UAP programs right now within the various intelligence agencies and military branches. And that knowledge will come out in the near future. I'll talk more about that later in this video. After all these revelations that we've had, so far nobody seems to give a damn about UFOs except for freaks like us. The reason for this is twofold. Firstly, most of academia, science, and journalism have bought into 70 years of government propaganda that UFOs are not unknown technology, and that if you give them any serious thought, you're nothing but a kook. But secondly, and perhaps more significantly, people don't care about flying objects in the sky, even if those objects may come from other worlds. And the reason for this is as follows. 795 million people in our world lack enough food to lead a healthy, active life. That equates to about 1/9 of all people on planet Earth. 1/3 of all people in our world lack access to proper toilets. Don't take taking a dump for granted if you do so on a well-oiled toilet. 1.2 billion people in our world have little or no access to electricity. Over 60 million people were killed in World War II, which was, very disturbingly, 3% of the world's population in 1940. There are 15,000 warheads among nuclear-bearing states. At any moment and for any reason, whether intentionally or in error, a nuclear power could fire off a nuclear missile that could trigger a nuclear exchange that would kill each and every one of us. In other words, our world is profoundly precarious and has endless problems on the microcosmic as well as the macrocosmic level. When you consider the terrestrial problems we all face on a day-to-day basis, learning that there are unknown technological objects in our sky doesn't mean much to your average person. This reality will not rank high on their priorities, and this is why nobody has cared that much about the recent UAP revelations. So the question arises, will the UAP phenomena ever take center stage in our world? Will it ever rise above all the terrestrial concerns of our daily lives? Will it ever be able to compete with all the hardships mankind has faced for eons and all those we still face to this very day? The answer to that question is 100% yes, it will. But it won't do so until science, academia, and mainstream media fully accept that technological craft are flying around in our skies with impunity. And science, academia, and mainstream media will not accept that reality until the government releases more information on the UAP presence. So this is how this breaks down. World governments will release more data on the UAP phenomena to the extent that science, academia, and MSM will have no choice but to accept the reality that there are technological crafts in our skies that are traveling in our airspace with impunity. When that takes place, finally, world society will make the UAP phenomena a priority above all other subject matters on this planet. So this begs the question, why is that process necessary before the UAP phenomena can transcend the terrestrial concerns of humanity? I mean, such a process shouldn't be required when you consider that, according to a recent survey, nearly half of all Americans believe in aliens, and almost as many believe they are visiting Earth. Such a huge percentage of the U.S. population believing this should absolutely be sufficient to ensure the UAP presence takes on a prime concern for the American people. Frankly, a whole book could be written on why the UAP phenomena has not taken center stage within public discourse of Americans. Here is the short answer. A. As long as there is a stigma attached to talking about UFOs, people are never going to care as much about them as they do their various terrestrial concerns. B. People are not free thinkers as much as we'd like to believe. They require daddy governmental institutions, daddy scientific institutions, daddy academic institutions, and daddy media institutions to tell them what to consider important and what to focus their minds on. And finally, C. Because of A and B, we as a species, barring disclosure, will never collectively focus on the implications of these objects that are flying around in our sky. It's the implications that will facilitate the UAP phenomena transcending our daily terrestrial concerns. It's the implications of UAP that will cause the paradigm shift, and not the mere knowledge that UAP exists in our skies. We already have a huge percentage of humanity that believe our Earth is being visited by UAP, and that has failed to trigger the paradigm shift that awaits. So here is a small sample of the implications of a UAP reality that is going to trigger the greatest paradigm shift that has ever occurred in the history of our kind. How much of the vast UFO literature is true? Are abductions real? And is there anything we can do about it? Why are aliens here? Who are they and what do they want? Will open contact ever happen? If so, when and how? Is there anything we can do to persuade the alien presence to begin engaging in open contact? Can we trust these visitors? Will these visitors transfer any of their advanced tech to us? Is there anything the human species can do to persuade these visitors to provide us with life-enhancing technology such as medical and energy technology? Is there a possibility we'd ever have to defend ourselves from these visitors? And more importantly, would there be even a semblance of hope we would be able to defend ourselves? Will these visitors give us an opportunity to visit their homes in other star systems? We know that these visitors travel in our skies and in our oceans. Do they have any permanent bases on our planet? What does governments of the world concealing what they knew about the UAP presence for 70 years tell us about the governmental structures of our world? What does scientists, journalists, and academia ignoring 70 years of overwhelming evidence that UAP are real tell us about the nature of man? So now that we are completely aware on what my definition of disclosure is and what will trigger the paradigm shift, I want to share with you Stephen Bassett's prognostication of how disclosure will happen. By doing so, you will better understand why I think my prognostication is much more likely to occur than Bassett's. Here is Bassett's prognostication on how disclosure will occur. This is derived from the Exopolitics Great Britain lecture. Link is in the description. According to Bassett, disclosure will occur by a single nation, not the United Nation. It will happen on a Friday evening at around 7 p.m. after the news cycle when people are home and having dinner. The President of the United States, assuming that's the nation to disclose, will have his people approach the media and say, "I need a couple minutes this coming Friday evening." When Friday night rolls around, about 10 minutes prior to 7 p.m., some of the presidential people will go to the major networks and say, "Listen, we're going to require 2 more hours than the short time we originally asked for, and this is not a request, it's a demand, and you will do it." And the President of the United States will go on camera from the Oval Office and say something along these lines. "You're about to receive some extraordinary information this evening, and you need to know 2 things about that. 1, as your president, I fully authorize that this information be released to you. And number 2, there is no reason for you to be alarmed at this time. And at that point, the broadcast will cut to the press conference, probably at some appropriate place like National Academy of Sciences. At that conference, there will be a moderator and a podium. At the table will be some very distinguished people of all walks of life. And it's the moderator that steps to the microphone that announces to the American people, and indeed the world, that there is an extraterrestrial presence on our planet. Yeah, that's not how it's going to happen, in my opinion. For starters, if you were part of a top secret UAP program for many years within an intelligence agency, and you were also part of a committee planning on disclosing the UAP presence to Americans and ultimately the world, what would be your ideal method to do so? Well, if you wanted to be as disruptive as humanly possible, and put the fact that small pockets within the US government have been studying the UAP phenomena since the 40s under a giant spotlight, then Bassett's method of disclosure would be supreme. But you probably wouldn't want to engage disclosure in that manner. I mean, if I was part of a committee pushing for greater governmental transparency on the UAP presence, I wouldn't want to institute disclosure in the formal manner that Stephen Bassett lays out. I would go so far as to say I would be highly antagonistic to such a proposition. Here is how I would implement disclosure. I would begin by releasing UFO gun camera videos and would continue to release them for some time. I would reveal that there is a program within the US government that is tasked with studying UAP. As time progressed, I would strategically share more data on the various UAP gun camera videos that were released, which would give further fidelity to their veracity. All the while, I would continue to release more and more UAP gun camera videos as time progressed. At a certain point, I'd get the New York Times to write up yet another bombshell article on the UFO subject, this time outlining that ATIP was not the only program studying UAP within the US government. And I would share some of the names of those other programs tasked with studying UAP. I would engage this process over many months until finally science, academia, and mainstream media had no choice but to fully accept that UAP are technological and almost certainly not of human origin. Behold, we have just transitioned into a post-disclosure world while minimizing embarrassment to the military-industrial complex and to the United States intelligence communities. To be clear, I am not suggesting that Luis Elizondo or anyone else working for To the Stars Academy are clandestinely connected with a disclosure effort within the government. I am suggesting, however, that the way our world is slowly transitioning into acceptance of UAP being real is precisely how I would implement disclosure if I pulled any of the strings responsible for the disclosure process. Now, if my model of disclosure occurs, does this mean there will be no pushback by science, academia, and mainstream media when they discover that the secrecy behind UAP has been ongoing for 70 years? While I do believe that the most likely way disclosure will happen, which I've outlined, will minimize such pushback, there is of course no way to completely prevent it. There will be some pushback as we passage into a post-disclosure world. That's for certain. But there won't be nearly as much as you might anticipate or as some ufologists would lead you to believe. And ironically, this is because disclosure will not only be embarrassing for the military-industrial complex and for the U.S. intelligence agencies, and quite frankly, militaries and intelligence agencies across the globe, but it will also be embarrassing for the worldwide scientific community, the worldwide academic community, the worldwide journalistic community. Their abject failure over the past 70 years to acknowledge the overwhelming evidence that UAP are real is not something they are going to want to put under a spotlight. And the great irony is that if these institutions push back against the military and intelligence apparatuses that kept it a secret from them, that's going to open them up to harsh criticism that they either were incapable of figuring out that UAP were real for themselves or that they weren't willing to talk about it. So because of this, I suspect the scientific, academic, and journalistic institutions of our world will literally minimize any pushback toward the US government in a post-disclosure world. I'm not suggesting that heads of states will not play any role in disclosure. At a certain point, they will chime in their assessments of this transition we're all passing through. There will almost certainly be legislative implications to disclosure as well, and there will be governmental implications. It will not sit well with people to know that governmental structures on our planet have concealed such a huge facet of our reality. That said, my overall impression on how disclosure will reach its zenith is as follows. People will slowly wake up to what many already know. There is a presence on the planet, and it ain't human. This realization won't happen overnight, which is the model Stephen Bassett proposes, but it will happen very rapidly. My gut tells me it's going to be a very bizarre transition. On the one hand, we're going to be in this new scientific and spiritual space triggered by a worldwide governmental recognition of the phenomena spearheaded by the US government. On the other hand, paradoxically, people are going to accept it so readily and so quickly, it will be as if we never lived without knowing the truth. I guess what I'm trying to say is that disclosure will be the biggest transition humanity has ever taken, but at the same time, we're also a pretty jaded bunch. We've been through so much and witnessed so much over the past few centuries alone, from the Enlightenment to the Industrial Revolution, and now what we're on the cusp of, a transition into a post-disclosure world. And no, I do not foresee world governments creating massive spin regarding the alien presence. There are 3 core reasons for this. Firstly, disclosure will be a transition that underscores that governmental structures the world over have concealed the most profound truth in our universe. We are not alone, and that's not a theory, it's knowledge. Secondly, our planet has 7 billion fact-checkers who will rapidly look into every claim governments make regarding the alien presence. Amongst these fact-checkers will be the brightest and most influential minds of our world. Lastly, nobody can discount the possibility of contact. If intelligence communities the world over want to minimize the probability of an alien intelligence easily manipulating world society, they'd be best advised to maintain honesty about what they know regarding the alien presence. A very dangerous scenario could unfold where open contact occurs, whether we want it to or not, and the alien intelligence explains how governments lied about them. In my view, this is a scenario that should be avoided at all costs. A post-disclosure world is profoundly infertile to seeds of deception. Now, for a little disclosure news to give you a taste of what's to come as we passage into a post-disclosure world. According to the executive director at MUFON, Jan Harzan, this past January, a nuclear missile base in the Dakotas had their power shut off for 2 hours from a UAP. He made this statement on the UFO show. It should be noted that this kind of tampering at nuclear missile silo installations by UAP is nothing new. Here's an excerpt from UFOhastings.com. Significantly, the UFO activity occasionally transcends mere surveillance and involves direct and unambiguous interference with our strategic weapons systems. Numerous cases include reports of mysterious malfunctions of large numbers of nuclear missiles just as one or more UFOs hovered nearby. Declassified Soviet Ministry of Defense documents confirm that such incidents also occurred in the former USSR. To date, Hastings has interviewed more than 150 military veterans who were involved in various UFO-related incidents at U.S. missile sites, weapon storage facilities, and nuclear bomb test ranges. The events described by these individuals leave little doubt that the U.S. nuclear weapons program is an ongoing source of interest to someone possessing vastly superior technology. Even former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has revealed that a missile installation in Montana was recently tampered with by a UAP. He exclaimed, "This kind of thing happens all the time." Furthermore, Luis Elizondo verified that his experience studying UAP at the Pentagon revealed that military hardware has been affected or disabled during UFO encounters. The multi-layered corroboration over many decades, which includes U.S. government documents and Soviet Union government documents that UAP interfere with military installations is overwhelming, and in my opinion, its reality is far beyond a reasonable doubt at this point. Here's an excerpt from Chris Mellon in a March 9th Washington Post article titled, "The Military Keeps Encountering UFOs. Why doesn't the Pentagon care?" The UFO gun camera videos, along with observations by pilots and radar operators, appears to provide evidence of the existence of aircraft far superior to anything possessed by the United States or its allies. Defense Department officials who analyzed the relevant intelligence confirm more than a dozen such incidents off the East Coast alone since 2015. And here's even further corroboration regarding the reported spate of UAP encounters that happened in 2015. Danny Silva recounts a statement by Jeremy Corbell. Danny, yes, very separate. Something not reported yet is that many of the East Coast 2015 AAVs were similar to what you would consider a scout. Many appeared as squares with a spherical aura surrounding them. Very strange indeed. Corbell made it clear that he had his own source for this revelation apart from Chris Mellon. Another bombshell that Corbell recently dropped comes from a recent Phenomenon Radio interview with Linda Moulton Howe and John Burroughs. And I quote, "I will tell you this now and I will be proven right later, but I'll put it on the record now. There are multiple UFO programs going at this time that are not being named right now, and there are 4 in particular that will probably come out." George Knapp later confirmed that what Corbell stated has veracity. Finally, something I've already reported on, but it's worthy of repetition. Based on a conversation Luis Elizondo reportedly had with Roger Marsh, who is the Director of Communications for the Mutual UFO Network, there are many more UAP videos that are going to be released by the Pentagon in the near future. And they are going to be even better and more spectacular than the first 3 that have already been released. Moreover, the next wave of UAP information is coming as early as January or February 2019. And that was recounted on the radio program Midnight in the Desert with host Dave Schrader. If you don't think we're on the cusp of worldwide disclosure, I'd kindly ask you to reconsider. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop, link is in the description below, or you could even become a patron, or you could just slap a like on this bad boy, and I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.